On this episode of ResiWeek, Matter is the new home standard. Apple opens up HomeKit, and 83% of workers prefer hybrid. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 280, Matter Matters.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Draper.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by some of my best friends. First, we have Mr. Mitchell Klein. He is the executive director of the Z-Wave Alliance. How are you, sir?
Doing great, and happy post-COVID, we hope.
Yeah, sort of. We just came out of our third lockdown a little bit, so yeah. I'm waiting on the fourth.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah, well, now we'll go for four. Then we have Mariusz Malowecki. He is a customer service and integration at Building 36 and or Alarm.com. How are you doing, Mariusz?
Very good, Matt. Thanks for having me. And Mitch, I know you were shaking your head. Close enough.
It's really close.
Okay. We can go with that.
I tried. Then we have Jamie Briesmeister. She is the CEO/boss lady at Integration Controls. How are you, Jamie?
Doing well, thank you.
Thanks for being here. And last but certainly not least, coming to us directly from a hiking trail, Ian Bryant. He is the VP of Technology, Application, and Workforce at Cedia. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I think we're a little bit outdated on the title, but that's all right.
Do you change your titles again? Send it over to me. We'll update it. It's another one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from MakeUseOf.com. Everything you need to know about Matter, the new smart home standard. What Matter is it is a partnership between Chip, which again is a partnership of Amazon, Apple, Google, Samsung, and the Connectivity Standards Alliance, which you used to know as Zigbee. It is a huge collaboration of products coming together and technologies coming together as a unified standard so that most of those products will finally work together. Mr. Mitchell Klein, it is fantastic that you are here because you are my go-to person for everything in this world of alliances.
I'll take all the flack you can toss my way.
I haven't started the flack yet. Well, yes, I did. I started with Ian. When you're following Matter, obviously the one standard that kind of wasn't involved in that we hear of is Z-Wave. But what does it mean to see all of the other standards kind of come together and talk about having connectivity and interoperability between obviously themselves, but everything else that's out there, including we're assuming Z-Wave?
Yeah, well, first of all, I could get into details on things in the everything you need to know that were actually incorrect, but I won't go there because that'll take another half an hour. But just to fully understand it, that project Connected Home over IP is a subset. You're a member of the Zigbee Alliance, and then you kind of join up with the working group that was developing it. And I think it's really important to understand that the intent is for complete interoperability to make things just work together. And when you say that, you also must understand that there's millions and hundreds of millions of devices out in the marketplaces all around the world that will not be turned off, because in order for the promise of Matter to be realized, all those hundreds of millions of devices must also work within that same Matter platform. And it will. But what we also have to recognize is it's going to start off small with a few things and continue to grow from that point on. So from a Z-Wave perspective, we're thrilled because we've been saying this for 20 years. Things must interoperate. Things must be backwards compatible. Things must be secure. And again, I can go on, and I'd actually let, maybe perhaps my associate here, Mariusz, can really speak to a number of those promises that Z-Wave makes that we expect will be fulfilled through the Matter group as well.
That's a really good question, Mariusz. When you see this from the Alarm.com standpoint, that's a huge consumer-facing brand. right? When people buy into ADC, they're assuming that all of their smart products are just going to work on that platform. And the majority of them do, but obviously there's always an outlier that doesn't. What does Matter mean to you guys from the ADC side, and to Mitch's point, from the Z-Wave side?
So again, we welcome interoperability. I think that's spot on where the industry needs to go, right? And again, to Mitch's point, we've been there for 20 or so years. And when you look at the market that you enter as a, let's say, security dealer, they come into the house, the last thing they want to say is, oh, by the way, for our system to work, you have to replace your door lock, thermostat, garage door opener. That's not what we do. We would rather focus on getting all those devices work together. So again, interoperable standards are very welcome in our business, right? That allows us to deploy the system much easier and not worry about one-offs.
Yeah, very good. Jamie, my concern every time I see a new standard is we usually have just got our customer base to sort of understand even just the terminology that we're talking about. The second that,
Right.
GAFA starts talking about chip, it's another thing that is, again, part of Matter, et cetera. But it's another phrase, it's another term. Is there anything we can do as integrators to really help our clients understand that? Or is it something that we kind of just need to, again, take the approach of, we're just going to make everything work?
I think our approach should be that we're the filter through which information flows to our clients. And we need to know what's happening. We need to know the trajectory of their system that we're putting in their house. And as much as possible, have our eye to the future. But I don't know if we need to talk about every technology possibility between the standards and what have you, because it'll change, a week later or a month later, or by the time they actually move in. So I think that we need to be aware of this, certainly, and talk amongst ourselves and learn in our industry and let our clients know there's changes on the horizon, similar to, the analog sunset when everything went digital and we went from component to HDMI. There was a transition there, and we knew in our industry that was happening before a lot of consumers.
Yeah.
So we could hold them back by continuing one type of old infrastructure, or we could move them forward in a digital way. So I think that's our approach. Really, I'm excited to see this. Mitch, I've known you've been talking about interoperability since you asked me to volunteer for CEDIA, over almost a decade ago. Yep. So I think this is fantastic, really.
Yeah, just let me point out one other thing, Matt, which wasn't mentioned in the article, that, again, to geek out just a little bit, Matter is only an application layer, and it's going to require network and transports and PHYs and all those other aspects. And so for the time being, the group has landed upon Thread, which is basically nothing more than a network standard, and Wi-Fi, which we all know is a network standard. And those two do not interoperate. Yeah. And so in order for that promising, and this is just the beginning of it, they actually have to have this thing that I guess they're calling a border router. We can call it a gateway. You can call it a hub. Essentially, they're all one and the same. And the purpose is, at this point, is to make sure that Thread devices work with Wi-Fi devices. Yeah. And you can easily move on from that and say, okay, and Zigbee devices, and Z-Wave devices, and Bluetooth. So you can see where that's going to go, and that's where the promise is.
Ian, let's wrap this before we move on. My concern every time I see partnerships and alliances and everything else, especially with the big four brands, is that at some point they might get bored and move on. Is that a concern, or is this a big enough entity that we will be less concerned with that?
I think, what the work that Mitch has been doing for so long on interoperability, this whole conversation we're having, the fact that we've got Apple, Google, Amazon, and those people a part of this program is showing you that there is some serious movement behind this and support that will continue to go on for a long time. I personally don't see from being in control systems and integrating homes and trying to get platforms to communicate together. I see this as a very big positive. I wanted to touch on one thing. I know I've heard some concerns of people thinking that this is going to take business or work away from integrators, and in fact, I think it's the exact opposite. That it's going to help the platforms be more connected and allow for more opportunities. And it may be that there's less custom coding on the back end, but means there's more ability to integrate subsystems and there's more design opportunities available. So I think this is a very good opportunity for the industry as a whole.
Add to that, Ian, the fact that customers will have good experiences.
Yep.
And I think that's really important too.
Mitch, let me just ask you this before we move on. What can manufacturers do to bring their existing customers who have, Z-Wave and a variety of devices into this platform?
Well, I mean, I can put on my Silicon Labs hat and say that what we're looking at here really are building blocks. Mm-hmm. And so essentially there'll be a block that will say, okay, Z-Wave, here's how you're going to connect to Matter. Matter, here's how you're going to connect to Z-Wave. So if you're manufacturing Z-Wave products right now, keep on going, because you got the best platform that exists with the best ecosystems out there. And yeah, you will be able to work with Matter devices as well. Just a matter of time.
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.